So what's up people, and welcome to another Alita Battle Angel video. So for today's video, I titled it The Koyomi Dilemma. And I'm not sure if that's appropriate. I wasn't sure how to title it. It's not really a dilemma. I was going to call it the Koyomi conflict, but it's not really a conflict. There's really not a problem. It's just that there is such a great difference between the Koyomi character in the movie and the one in the comic that I wasn't sure how to word this properly. But what I wanted to do in this video was talk about the differences that you see between the Koyomi in the movie and the Koyomi in the comic. And basically ask you viewers where you feel this Koyomi character may be in the future movies if there are to be sequels. And although we will be talking about future incidents with regards to Koyomi in the comic, I'm not going to particularly put a spoiler warning up for this one because of the fact that the character of Koyomi is so different from the one in the movie versus the one in the comic that I really can't say if any of the things that we see regarding Koyomi in the comic will ever be what we see in the movie, and everything that we will talk about here will be very much speculation based upon the things that we see in the comic. So to be honest, I have no idea if any of this stuff will ever come out in the movie, and because of that I can't say whether or not this is going to be a spoiler. But if you're worried about it, then I would suggest that you turn off this video, but as always, please watch at your discretion. Okay, so Koyomi, yeah. When I saw the Alita Battle Angel movie, although there were differences in many of the characters, such as an older Ido, or a much more darker Vector, or a difference in Gruishka versus Makaku, and the most noticeable and the most concerning one being Nova. However, as far as sheer character change between the movie and the comic, I would have to say that none of the other characters changed as much as Koyomi. I mean, this is the Koyomi in the movie. And along the same chapters in the comic, this is the Koyomi in the comic. And I would have to say that none of the other characters have changed so much between this character in the comic to this character in the movie. And of course, since Koyomi doesn't play a major role in the early chapters of the comic, how could she? She's an infant. Really wasn't a big deal for this change. However, of course, as the comic continues and as we expect the movie to continue in its sequel, the Koyomi in the comic changes. And instead of having a minor role, she starts getting a more significant role later on. So as you know, in the comic, a significant amount of time passes between the different arcs. And so by the time we get to the Japan arc, this is the Koyomi in the comic. And of course, there's a significant time skip during the Badlands arc. And by the time we get to the Badlands arc, 10 years has passed after the Japan arc, and Koyomi ends up looking like this. And of course, in the Badlands arc, Koyomi does play a significant role once Lord Den appears into the story. And so, yeah, as much as Koyomi has grown, she's still an adolescent at this time. She's about 10 years old. No, more like 12 years old, I think, is how old she is at this time. And so, how will the movie Koyomi relate to that? And of course, by the end of the story, when we get to the very, very end of the Zalem arc, of course, Koyomi finally catches up to the one in the movie by being about 18 years old. And so I am curious to see how this will play out for the Koyomi in the movie. Now, one thing I will have to say is I did really like the character of Koyomi in the movie. She was a very kind and soft-hearted, sympathetic sort of person as compared to some of the other minor characters that came out. And that created a nice contrast between the dark, rough edges of Iron City versus her characteristic. And it also related well to the Koyomi in the comic, because I also felt that the Koyomi in the comic was basically a good character. Yes, she was maybe more of a survivor and a little bit more hard-lined, but I felt that she had good values in her. And in fact, whenever something did, trouble her in terms of morals, then she went basically towards defending the morals that she believed in, even if it meant having to go against a character like Alita. That was one of the reasons why she defended Lord Den when Alita tried to kill him, because of the fact that she felt that his morals with regards to the resistance and the freedom of the people on the ground was an important thing to fight for. And so that's why she kind of defended Lord Den. So yeah, I did like the character of Koyomi in the movie. And in fact, I like the character of Koyomi in the movie far, far better than the Koyomi that comes out in the novels, these novelizations, or at least the one for the Iron City novel. And I would presume that that's the same for the main movie novel because it's the same author. The Koyomi in the novels is a much more colder and much more morally questioned character. She basically is a jacker, and the way she is portrayed in the novel, she's kind of doesn't mind being a jacker, doesn't mind ripping, components off of their targets. In fact, I kind of got the feeling that Koyomi in the novel was just a female equivalent of Tanji. And so I'm very happy that the Koyomi in the movie was a lot more sympathetic, because that was closer to the Koyomi in the comic. And this older Koyomi may play out well depending upon how the movie moves forward. Because there is still a question of whether the Badlands storyline will be included. And if it isn't, then you have to get rid of close to 10 years of that storyline. In which case, it may be better to have an adult Koyomi already than the Koyomi that you see in the comic that grows as the time goes on. And although you may need a small adolescent girl that Koyomi portrayed in the Japan arc to do that very memorable gardening scene, that can be done with an additional unnamed adolescent child. And to be honest, I am wondering if the Japan arc is in the next sequel, maybe Koyomi will portray the role of Shumira in that arc. And I don't mean Shumira in the Motorball arc. I don't expect Koyomi to be the younger sister of Jashigen. However, of course, by the time we get to the Japan arc, we know that Shumira is now playing a waitress at the Kansas bar. And I could see this happening to the Koyomi in the movie because, of course, if she was a jacker, then I could imagine that she would be quitting that job, considering after Hugo and Tanji's death, I can't imagine her emotions to be willing to continue on as a jacker. And if she wasn't a jacker, then of course she would still need a line of work. And so she could play two roles. One, she could play a babysitter for that young adolescent girl so that Koyomi is still in that gardening picture, but more as the role of Shumira rather than the young adolescent Koyomi. And then, of course, she could play Shumira's role as the waitress in the Kansas bar during the Japan arc. And I think that that will play out well if they decide not to include Shumira in the movie. And of course, if they decide to expand the trilogy to additional movies to include the Badlands arc, then we could still have Koyomi play that role in the Badlands arc because, to be honest, that role can be played by a teenager just as much as an adolescent. Sure, it was interesting to see an adolescent Koyomi get awestruck by the morals that Lord Den portrayed, but I could see a teenage Koyomi also being kind of emotionally struck by the message that Lord Den was giving. And so, yeah, we could still have this Koyomi portray that role if they decide to put the Badlands arc in. And because of that, there doesn't have to be a major time skip between the Japan arc and the Badlands arc. You know, when we get to the Badlands arc, there doesn't have to be a 10-year intermission. You know, there may be a 1-year intermission or whatever just to settle things. But yeah, I mean, they could move right away into the Badlands arc. And then, of course, when we get to the very end, in the Zalem arc, whichever Zalem arc they take, whether they take it from the original story and the original ending, or the Last Order story and the ending you see in Last Order, which, to be honest, I don't know how they're going to put the Last Order ending in, but even if they do, you see a 18-year-old Koyomi in both of those. And so then, this Koyomi turns out to, of course, fit well with that part of the story. So, from my opinion, I feel that even though there is a significant difference between the Koyomi in the movie to the corresponding Koyomi in the early chapters of the comic, I think it still may turn out to be okay. You know, when I first originally heard that Lana Condor was being cast as Koyomi for the movie, I was like, what? What the heck is going on? How is an adult actress supposed to portray an infant child in the first few chapters of Battle Angel Alita during the live-action movie? However, now that we look at this and see how this progresses, then there may be a way that they can actually modify this so that this adult Koyomi can actually play various characters as the Alita cinematic universe, not the Alita comic universe, but the cinematic universe progresses. And in that case, maybe there won't be as significant a time jump between the first few chapters of the comic to the last chapters of the comic in the movie. In the movie, it may only be a couple of years, maybe 3 years or so, in which case it may be more appropriate to have an adult Koyomi right from the very beginning. Anyway, that's it for this video. Yeah, it was a relatively minor video, and thank you very much for watching. And if you have any comments, please post it in the comment section below. What do you think? I mean, I know this is a minor character, so it may not make much of a difference, but this was the character that was changed significantly between the comic and the movie. And do you feel that there was some problem with this? I don't think so in the first movie, but do you feel that there may be problems that may come up in the latter parts of the movie? Anyway, thank you very much for any comments that you put down. I always enjoy your comments a lot. And I'll continue to make more Alita Battle Angel movies in the future, and at that time, I hope you join us. And until the next one, happy comic reading, happy anime watching, happy movie watching, and as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.